Netflix thought they were finally done with Meghan Markle. 2 seasons of With Love, Meghan had come and gone, barely making a dent in ratings, costing millions, and exhausting everyone involved. The reshoots were wrapped. Editors were working tirelessly to bring season 2 together. Marketing slashed in half. Inside Netflix, the vibe was simple: push it out, get it off the books, and never speak of it again. But just when they thought the Meghan chapter was closing, it took a sharp, unexpected turn. While clearing out Meghan's personal office at Netflix headquarters, yes, she actually had her own little workspace. Like an A-list showrunner, the IT team stumbled on something they weren't ready for. Buried in her digital folders was a collection of audio files, not production notes, not voiceovers. These were raw, unfiltered recordings, and not just a few clips, an entire vault. According to people familiar with the discovery, Meghan had been keeping what she called her private diary. Only it wasn't private. And it definitely wasn't a diary. It was a voice memo collection of emotional outbursts, accusations, and personal takedowns of some of the most powerful people in Hollywood, including Netflix CEOs Ted Sarandos and Greg Peters. One of the first files they opened, labeled Podcast Cut Greg, insiders claim it was a full-on verbal assault on Peters, calling him a sexist, a control freak, and someone who never respected her vision for the show. She accused the entire Netflix leadership team of being a clique that stifled her creativity and undermined her every step. And here's the thing, she wasn't just venting. The files were neatly organized into segments, complete with intros and outros, like they were ready to drop straight into a fully produced podcast. Even more shocking, each file had timestamps and working titles for an upcoming podcast she planned to launch in 2026. That's when the mood inside Netflix shifted from annoyed to furious. Among the other files was a long, uninterrupted rant about how her key scenes featuring Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom were deliberately removed from With Love, Meghan Season 2. She claimed those scenes would have humiliated Donald Trump and sent a powerful message about progressive leadership in Hollywood. According to a source close to the situation, she was livid that Netflix caved to pressure and watered down her message. Then came the kicker. Several recordings were aimed directly at Ted Sarandos. In one, she called him two-faced, accusing him of publicly supporting her while privately sabotaging her career. She alleged he personally signed off on erasing her political cameos, and worse, quietly distanced Netflix from her brand without telling her. These weren't whispered frustrations. They were explosive monologues, clearly meant for public release once her contract ended. What really set Netflix off was that she had both digital and physical copies of these recordings stored on company property. That alone sparked legal concerns. Once the IT team discovered that the files were marked for public release, the situation quickly escalated. Emergency meetings were called. Sarandos, reportedly blindsided and livid, ordered a full review of every piece of content Meghan had touched while at Netflix. At this point, it wasn't just about ending a contract. They were preparing for a war. Meghan, though, didn't seem fazed. She was doubling down on her podcast plans, betting the controversy would fuel virality. Like the pregnancy video that once set the internet on fire, she believed these tapes would make headlines. Only this time, the stakes were way higher. Netflix experienced a state of complete panic. Legal teams scrambled to assess the damage. PR executives quietly drafted contingency plans in case the tapes went public. She hadn't broken any explicit laws yet, but insiders say Netflix knew one thing: she was holding those recordings like leverage. And she wasn't bluffing. The mood shifted from embarrassment to betrayal. This wasn't just a disgruntled producer venting behind closed doors. This was someone who'd been given a golden opportunity, her own show, her own space, partial creative control, and instead of building something lasting, she'd spent her time documenting frustrations and plotting a counterstrike. Executives began combing through Season 2 footage, paranoid there might be more landmines hidden inside. Editors were told to cross-check scenes with internal memos, looking for anything that could be spun into controversy later. Meanwhile, Meghan's personal emails, work chats, and meeting transcripts were quietly reviewed. It wasn't about spying, it was about self-protection. What they found didn't help. In one internal thread, Meghan had clashed repeatedly with the writing team over her push to insert political cameos. She wanted a dinner scene with Kamala Harris and Gavin Newsom, saying it would symbolize the progressive unity Hollywood needed to showcase. Most of the team, including the director, pushed back, not because of the politics, but because it didn't fit the tone. The show was meant to be light, romantic, and fictional. These cameos felt jarring and opportunistic. She didn't take the rejection well. In a series of back-and-forth messages, she accused staff of silencing her voice, being afraid to take cultural risks, and resenting her presence as a powerful woman of color in the industry. Her tone grew defensive, at times hostile. People stopped responding, writers disengaged. By the final weeks of production, no one was sure who was even calling the shots. The show became chaotic, patched together by a rotating team of editors, many of whom had never met Meghan in person. And all the while, she kept recording. What pushed Netflix over the edge wasn't the politics or the CEO rants. It was how strategic the whole thing was. Each file had a title, a purpose, a target. Netflix Boys Club, They Cut My Power, Fake Feminists, Greg the Gatekeeper. The content wasn't random venting, it was a campaign. And with her podcast set for 2026, she planned to roll them out like episodes of Revenge. Publicly, Netflix stayed silent. No statements, no leaks, but internally they were already planning their response. Step 1: cut ties permanently. No renewal, no spin-offs, no promotion beyond what was contractually required. Once season 2 dropped, they'd wash their hands of it. What they didn't expect, Meghan wasn't planning to wait. She'd already started hinting at the podcast on her private Instagram stories, blurred clips of audio files, shots of a voiceover booth, captions like "the truth always comes out." Her followers didn't know what she meant yet. Netflix did, and they knew what was coming next would be ugly. Behind the scenes, Meghan was more calculated than ever. The fallout wasn't a setback, it was the setup for her next act. She saw the controversy as fuel. Her team had already started pitching the podcast under the working title Hollywood Unmasked, described as a raw, unfiltered journey through the lies, gatekeeping, and hypocrisy of the entertainment industry. Those recordings weren't just emotional outbursts anymore. They were exclusive content. Her plan was simple: let with love, Meghan's season 2 release, stay silent during the rollout, then drop the podcast weeks later. She'd ride the wave of attention from the show, using Netflix's silence to drive curiosity. Controversy sells, and she was betting big. She'd even begun courting allies, smaller media outlets, sympathetic journalists, and podcast platforms willing to overlook the Netflix drama for exclusive rights. The big players were cautious, but there were still plenty of takers eager for the next viral Meghan moment. Netflix, meanwhile, was in damage control mode. Staff were told not to mention her name. Her project was marked as delivered and archived in the system. All press releases regarding the show were reviewed by the legal department first. And most telling, employees were warned not to engage with any unauthorized content tied to the company. That's the code for the podcast. But the truth, they had no real way to stop her. She had copies of everything: digital backups, external drives, encrypted cloud folders. It was all ready to go. She wasn't just protecting herself. She was daring Netflix to make the first move. If they sued, she'd turn it into a media circus. If they ignored her, she'd frame it as silence from guilty men in power. In either scenario, she maintained control over the storyline. Legally, Netflix held the advantage. But in the court of public opinion, she had the advantage. Her fan base still saw her as a woman wronged, silenced by powerful institutions. And she leaned on that image hard. Every teaser was vague but loaded, captions like "they believed in me until I stopped being quiet." Even insiders were split. Some insiders believed she was burning bridges that she would never be able to rebuild. Others quietly admitted she wasn't wrong. Netflix had treated her like a short-term experiment. From the start, leadership was divided. Some backed her, others rolled their eyes at every creative call. It was a bad fit from day one. But now the split was public, emotional, and irreversible. Season 2 of With Love, Meghan dropped quietly, no press tour, no Instagram buzz, buried under bigger launches. Meghan didn't acknowledge it once. Exactly 13 days later, her podcast trailer went live. 1 minute and 42 seconds of raw audio, dramatic music, and one bold promise: they wanted me quiet. I recorded everything. And just like that, the real show began.